This morning we're going to be in Acts chapter 17. We should be able to finish the whole chapter there. Should be. That's always the optional term. We're going to talk a little bit about philosophy, about what the people that he was dealing with believed. Because understanding who you're talking to and what you're talking about are really two of the main keys of communication. If you are telling somebody something in a way that you understand it but they don't, it really doesn't matter. You might as well be speaking a different language. You have to really know what the person that is being communicated with, what they think about the world. Sorry. So this morning we're going to read verses 16 through 21, and we'll stop there and we'll camp out a little bit, and then we'll try to finish the rest of this. We got a little bit of a late start, so it's not all my fault this morning. But in verse 16, it says, "Now while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Some of the Epicurean and the Stoic philosophers also conversed with him, and some said, 'What does this babbler wish to say?' Others said, 'He seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities, because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection.' And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, 'May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? For you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean.' Now all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except for telling or hearing something new." Let's stop there for just a moment and kind of break down what exactly is going on. Because you have some pretty interesting terms here. The first thing that you hear here is that he's in Athens. Athens was a important place. This wasn't just some backwater. It wasn't some place that there was, we already know from the fact that he's in the synagogue that there's enough Jews there to have a synagogue, right? So that means that there's a certain percentage of the population that is Jewish. It says that there are the Stoic and the Epicurean philosophers. It says that there are devout people. That means that there are God-fearers who are Greeks. It's talking about all these different people. It even says foreigners. So it says that this is a hub it's a hub, like a crossroads of all different kinds of people talking about all kinds of different things. We were just in Jacksonville, and I guess I forget. Before we lived here, we lived in Tennessee. And in Tennessee, I don't know a better way to say it, it's just all white people. Like where we were in the mountains, just all hillbillies, and that just is what it is. Except for when we were on the college campus, we had people from Nigeria that we talked to and got to, you kind of talk about culture a lot when you deal with that. And here where we live, we're kind of homogenous in our culture in a lot of ways. In Jacksonville, staying with Natalie's parents, the people across the street I think they're Japanese. All the neighbors the one just moved back to South America. Everybody is from somewhere else. And I grew up with that, not really giving it a thought. It just was normal. You would meet people from all different kinds of nationalities and backgrounds. I grew up in the junkyard, which you wouldn't think would be a cultural hub of philosophies. But you did learn different languages. A lot of French was there. But, you dealt with people from Venezuela, Panama, Honduras, Central America, South America, all over the place. And the way that they would think and talk about things was different than the way that we think and talk about things. So when you're dealing with this situation that Paul is walking into, if he only speaks like he's talking to people from Jerusalem or to Jews, and he's like, all I'm talking to is just these people that are at the synagogue. The rest of you don't really matter that much. That's a foolish way to go into a city like this. It's very quick. Imagine if you go and you start talking to these people and they say, well, we're Epicureans, or we're Stoics. And he's just like, what's that? He has no idea what that even is. it's going to lend some credibility to you if you have an idea of what people are thinking and talking about. What the cultural, that's a word I don't like saying because it's hard to say, but you say the cultural milieu, right? Just the way that people are in the world around you. We live in a place here where we are we're away from everything. I mean, you say we're in the middle of nowhere, and we kind of are. We're just, it's not nowhere, but we're kind of in the middle of several different cities or towns or whatever. But you have the military here, which means that you've got people that have been everywhere, all over the world. You've got people from all over the world that you're interacting with. Now, you might only interact with them when you go down to Crestview and go to Walmart or whatever, but you interact with different philosophies in that way. And it's important to understand how people think about stuff if you ever want to be able to share the gospel with them. There was a time, I think about this often, where if you wanted to go and talk to someone who was Chinese, you wanted to be able to share the gospel, you wanted to be a Hudson Taylor and go over and share the gospel, you had to get on a plane and go to China. We live in a different world now to where the nations are here. There are people from everywhere, right around you all the time. We have the opportunity to be missionaries in a very different way, where you don't really have to go that far from home. You can just talk to people that are here that don't know what you're talking about. So in this situation, you have Paul. He's addressing the Athenians, which is foreigners, Jews, Epicureans, Stoics. Let's talk a little bit about what Epicureans and Stoic philosophers would believe, because it's important to have an idea, like we said. The Epicureans believed that the chief goal in life was pleasure, but not wild indulgence. They weren't what's the word I want to think of? Hedonist. They weren't hedonists to where everything in life was just pleasure, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. They're seeking pleasure, but not at the idea of indulgence. Their idea of pleasure was freedom from pain, fear, or disturbance. They denied divine providence, thinking the gods were distant and uninvolved in human affairs. They also denied life after death, believing death was the end of existence. There's something that you can understand when you talk to somebody that believes that. And we are dealing with people more and more in our world that believe these two philosophies, Stoicism and Epicureanism. It's much more prevalent than you would recognize or think. When you start to talk to people, this is the way that especially young people are thinking. There is nothing that comes after this, so what's the point? There is nothing that I earn or I achieve. There's no God to have to stand before. So that really all life becomes is just the seeking of the limitation of pain, the limitation of difficulties or trouble. That there's no point in really suffering. It's just to seek the best path forward for you and your family. And that's really all that matters. The idea of Stoicism is they emphasize self-control, virtue, and living in harmony with nature. They believe that a divine principle, often called logos or reason, ordered the universe. Unlike the Epicureans, they saw God as more involved, though in a pantheistic sense, equating God with nature itself. They prized reason over emotion and sought contentment through inner strength and detachment from circumstances. So they would be the people that would be, it doesn't really matter what's going on around us right now. I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to be strong. We have a world right now that's being influenced by people like David Goggins. We have this very strange culture that's happening where all of these special forces guys now have YouTube channels, and they're basically motivational coaches for the younger generation and telling them there really isn't anything important after this, but you should do as much as you can right now and be as strong and as determined and all of these things as you can right now. That would be more of that philosophy. It's not just the seeking of pleasure by limiting pain. It's the seeking of harmony. It's the seeking of trying to be the best person that you can, the strongest person that you can, because really the only thing that you have is you. These are two philosophies that they pervade our culture now. But at this time, these would be two of the things that people would stand in a town square, and they would debate the merits on it. They wouldn't necessarily be fighting. I mean, you see in the way that they're talking here, they're not fighting about things, they're just debating. Have you ever been able to have a conversation with somebody that you disagree with and just be able to put, here's all the things I think, here's all the things you think. We don't have to hate each other, but we can just we can talk about it. It often comes when you're not trying to prove yourself right, you're just trying to understand what somebody else thinks. In this kind of debate, you can see that there's a lot of notes of that, but there's also some, when Paul comes in, they start calling some names and stuff as well. But as you see this, what is it that draws or drives Paul's desire to proclaim the gospel in this place? The first thing that it says, he sees idols everywhere. When we worship God, what we're created to do is it's almost like he's created little mirrors all over the world in us, and that we are to reflect the glory of who God is back out into him, to be like a shining star that demonstrates, hey, this is who you are, this is what you're like, I'm made in your image, and I'm displaying that through your beauty and your just who you are. When someone like Paul, or hopefully us, when we walk into a place and we see people giving honor and glory to something that does not deserve honor and glory, that their object of worship and adoration is not the one that created the universe, but is something false. It doesn't just provoke, hey, guys, like, this is bad, this is stupid, this is wrong. It provokes a jealousy for God's worship to grow more and more, to go further into this world, that all people, every tongue, every nation, every philosophy that someone has held in the past would come to an understanding that God is the true God. There is none beside him, and would seek to drive people towards his worship. You see, that is what is driving Paul here. The worship of other gods is provoking a reaction in him. It's not just an irritation or a disgust for what they're doing, but it causes a desire to proclaim the true God and the work of the gospel. This is not just for the sake of those going after false things. We should desire to see them come to an understanding of the truth for their own sake, but ultimately this should provoke a desire to see the true God be glorified in all places by all people. It's interesting that Paul is going into both worlds here. He's going into the synagogue and he's reasoning with the Jews, and then he's going into the town square and he's reasoning with the philosophers, with the pagan philosophers. Paul is demonstrating all through his journey this idea of being all things to all people. To not just decide, this is who I am, this is what I'm like, this is the thing I do, and if somebody happens to do that too, and we just happen to kind of hook up in the world or whatever, then I've got somebody that I can talk to. What he's saying is that as a disciple, as a believer, as a follower of Christ, you're called to lay down your self. I'd say in some ways, and I don't mean this in too far of a sense, but in some ways, even our personality, even our things that we like and we dislike. It's kind of like, don't take this analogy too far, but it's kind of like marriage. I've never been a hobby person. Like, I like hobbies, weird stuff, collecting things. I've done drones and RC cars and guns and surfing and skateboarding and all kinds of different things. But when I got married, there was never this thing where I was like, you know what, on Saturdays, you stay home, I'm going to go off and I'm going to hit the golf course, or I'm going to go surf with the boys, or, I got some stuff to do, you just kind of, you hang out at the house, I'm going to, you do you, I'm going to do me. In our relationship with God, there can't be these things that we've held back, this time that we've held back. There can't be this thing where we say, you can have all of this, but leave these things over here alone. Leave this part of my life, that's for me. That's for the weekend. That's for the other days. That's for, however I'm feeling whenever. when we come into this relationship with God, we come in surrender of all things, every aspect of who we are. That includes that now as we go into the world, we're not just going in as Halston Brooks that likes, whatever I like. I don't even know. Some days it's different. That I'm going in as a believer and follower of Christ that is seeking to conform my life, my will, my actions, my even personality in some ways to fit within the culture that I'm in, to be all things to all people. It's not an easy thing, and it's not something that you obviously are always going to be perfect at. But this is an example that Paul is laying out for us right from the beginning. He goes in with the Jews, he's like, my people, let's talk. He goes out with the philosophers, he's like, my people, let's talk about this. We need to understand that that's who we have to be. We can't just say, well, I'm an American, I'm a Southerner, this is the way I feel about things, and that's all that matters. We've got, and I don't know a better way to say this, I'm just going to say it. We've got to go to the Scriptures and see, what does God say about us? What does He call us to be? What does He desire for us as His church to be in our community, in our families, in our world? And then we say, let that be true in when we say, let God be true and every man a liar, I'm every man. Let God be true, and if I disagree with what He says, I'm wrong. Let God be true, and if I feel differently than what He says is right, I'm wrong. That's hard. That's surrender and submission on another level. And it's not a one-time thing that we do and then we're good. It's a consistent, everyday seeking of His will in our life. He goes to the Jews. He wants to preach and proclaim to them in the best way that is possible. He goes to the philosophers. He wants to preach and proclaim to them in the best way possible. The two groups that he is encountering as far as the Epicureans and the Stoics are basically the same at the core. Their desire is to seek a philosophical system that limits pain and suffering in their life. Whether that's through discipline and structure and rigor and think of the person that is like, they wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and they go jog 3 miles, or let's say probably more than 3 miles, a lot more miles. 3 miles is like the dream for me. If I ran 3 miles, there'd be somebody in a mask chasing me, I can guarantee you. But that's that person. It just gets up, they eat the same thing every day, and they don't even think about it. It's just like, I eat protein at this time, and there's no enjoyment in life. It's only rigor. It's only things that are going to make me stronger. I don't want to live that way. I enjoy donuts, so I'm just going to be honest with you, and floating down the river sometimes. Like, it's just, man, what a terrible thing. But that's how these people would think. And then you have the other side that's seeking to eliminate suffering and pain by just seeking pleasure. What makes me happy? What brings joy to my life? I think that's the way that we live more and more in this world now. We have this Oprah mindset of, what is self-actualization to me? What is going to bring me peace and make me happy? Where's my truth and my joy? This isn't anything new. This has been going on forever. And we must fight against it. We must desire God's will above everything else. I'll just say this. They're both seeking contentment, although they're seeking it in two different ways, as we talked about. So the main thing to understand is that both groups would have seen Paul's preaching and understanding as foreign and distasteful. The main issue for both would have been the idea of resurrection, because the Epicureans did not believe in life after death, and the Stoics just simply saw matter as corrupt. That's why they saw this idea of conforming your body into their own will as so important, is because ultimately matter, physical matter, was corrupt. It didn't matter. It wasn't important. And so both of these groups, they don't see the resurrection as being a thing that is possible. and they would see it as foolishness. It made me think of 1 Corinthians. It's kind of a long verse here, but I just want to read it because it's important. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 18 through 31, it says, "For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of the age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God that the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and folly to the Gentiles. But to those who are called both Jew and Greek, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For consider your calling, brothers. Not many of you were wise according to worldly standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. And because of him you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God, righteousness and sanctification and redemption. So that as it is written, let the one who boasts boast in the Lord. The way that we see the world, if we believe in resurrection, it's going to be seen as foolishness. If we treat this life in a way where we lay it down and we're willing to do things that don't always make sense, we're willing to use our life, our resources, our time, our money, our talents, or whatever, in a way that doesn't really make sense to the rest of this world, they're going to call us fools. They're going to say we're crazy. And what he's saying here to these Stoic and Epicurean and haughty Jews and all the people that are there listening is that there is a wisdom that is wiser than all of these things that you're debating. There's something that is more important and greater and stronger. It's I've heard it said, the truest, realest thing. He's saying you can spend all of your time on all these things. You can stand here in this square and you can be the smartest guy. You can always win the debate. You can say all the right stuff. You can come with the biggest robe with the most stuff and have everybody be in awe when you walk in the room. Oh, look at him. It's Baja Jesus. I don't know, some Greek name. That's probably not a name at all. It's just something I said. But just, look what he's just so smart. He's so awesome. But he's saying that what we need to understand is this idea of resurrection. What is the foolishness of the wise people is the thing that saves us, that brings us strength, that allows us to lay down our life in submission and surrender. As we continue on in this chapter, in verse 22 it says, So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along, I observed the objects of your worship. I found also an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring. The first thing that Paul says to these people is, you guys are religious. You guys are very religious. What we need to understand is that all men are religious. No matter if you are the staunchest atheist or you are some person in a different country that doesn't think of anything about this, everyone has a religion that they adhere to. Everyone has some form of worship in their life. What we need to really grasp with is that there's really only two forms of worship. There's oneism, where we believe everything is one, that God and man are one thing. They're made of the same thing. That God and man and trees and the earth and all of the things around us, mountains, stones, streams, bees, deer, whatever, all one. And so as we worship God, what are we truly worshiping? We're just worshiping ourselves, because we are God. We are one with Him. We're made of the same thing. We're all just one big thing. That would be ultimately what these people believe. This pantheistic idea that God is in everything, which ultimately means God is in them. Then you have an idea called twoism, which means that there are two distinct things in this world. There is God and there is everything else. I am not God. You are not God. The trees outside are not God. The earth is not God. God is separate and distinct. He's holy. And so when he's proclaiming this, what he's ultimately proclaiming is that you as a person cannot worship things that are made in your own image. Cannot worship things that you formed with your own hands. Ultimately, if you do that, it's foolishness, because you're just worshiping yourself. You're making up rules and then saying, this is what I like, therefore I'm going to follow along this philosophy or a religious duty or whatever. He's saying that's true foolishness. He says everyone is religious. All of these people are religious. He says there's even one of your altars out here is just an unknown God. He's saying you've got so many altars to all these different gods that you've even got one that's like, hey, let's cover our bases in case there's one that we don't know about. It's just the unknown God over here. You know, and we'll do some stuff for him. We don't even know what he likes. We don't know who he is, but we'll just put some bananas over there or something. I don't know if they had bananas. Maybe they had bananas. But he's saying that the true God that made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. In Psalm 50, verses 7 through 15, he says, "Hear, O my people, and I will speak, O Israel, I will testify against you. I am God, your God. Not for your sacrifices do I rebuke you. Your burnt offerings are continually before me. I will not accept a bull from your house or goats from your folds. For every beast of the forest is mine, the cattle of 1,000 hills. I know all the birds of the hills, and all that moves in the field is mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you. For the world and its fullness are mine. Do I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Offer to God a sacrifice of thanksgiving and perform your vows to the Most High. And call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me." This idea that God is laying out in the Psalms even is saying, I do not require anything from you. You don't have anything that I need. Can you imagine? Just take a moment, suspend disbelief, and imagine yourself being like that. Just think of how many things you need from somebody else before noon. This idea of stoicism oftentimes was somebody who would pride themselves on the fact that they are prepared, they don't need anything, they've got everything they need, that they are a Promethean bringer of knowledge and light rather than a receiver of anything. That's stupid. It's crazy. You are constantly in need. From the day that you are born as a needer. You're constantly needing something. Isn't it weird? You ever think about how people are born in such a different way than every other thing that is born in this world? You ever watch like a deer or a horse be born? How long is it before they're up and walking? That's pretty quick. Lila's over there. Lila is almost a year old and she still isn't walking. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Rise and walk. We need things constantly from somebody else. Even if you get to the point where you think, I've got everything. I'm the doomsday prepper. I've got a vault full of guns and ammunition and food, and I've got air purifiers, and I've got all these things. You still need, you might need love and affection from somebody. You might need all kinds of things. But we are those who need. That is what we bring to the table with this relationship with God. That's why he says in that psalm, call upon me in your name in your day of trouble. That's what God wants from you. It's for you to present your need to him. He wants you to recognize who you are in the relationship with him. That you are not the one that provides, you are the one who takes. You are the one that he provides for. We get that out of order so often. It was something I said. But isn't it amazing that what he's presenting to them is God is not served by your human hands as though he needs anything. He gives to mankind life and breath and everything. It says that he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and boundaries of their dwelling place. You ever thought about that? Have you ever really just kind of considered the fact that God allowed you to be born to the parents that you were born to, in the place that you were born, that the places that you live or will live, that he has allotted that to you? You see, we're dealing with philosophies here in this passage as well as in this world that we live in now, where it's self-determinism, especially as Americans. As Americans, we really believe in this idea of self-determinism, our ability to create our own future. And what Paul is presenting to them, to these Greek people that are living in Rome, that is like, hey, we are the power force of the world. And he's saying, God's the one that allotted this place to you. God's the one that gives you your breath every day. God's the one that allows you to exist. In verse 29, he says, being then God's offspring, we ought not think the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and imagination of man. The time of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he had appointed. And of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. It's amazing to me that the crux of the matter when it comes to all of this, what Paul keeps proclaiming no matter where he's going, is this idea of the resurrection of Christ. The reason that that's so important is because death is the enemy that we all know. Death is the thing that we just inherently know exists. We all can feel the decay of our own bodies, the relentless marching towards death through time. We know what that's like. We know what it's like to lose people before their time. Every single person in this room has experienced the loss of a loved one. So when he's talking about this, what he's proclaiming is that this is the one that has power over even that enemy which no one can stand against. No one can fight. No one can beat. That Christ is the one that defeats death even. It says, now when they had heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, we will hear you again about this. So Paul went out from their midst. It says, but some men joined him and believed, among whom also were Dionysius, the Areopagite, and a woman named Damaris, and others with them. When they're confronted with the idea of the resurrection of Jesus, and this being the way that we come to the Father, there's really only two options here. You believe or you don't believe. It says some mocked and others believed. I like to argue for my points, things that I, especially, Natalie's not in here right this second, but I can tell you, she knows, I like to argue about just about everything. We were having a debate about something this weekend as we were driving, something in the news that was going on, and I was seeing it one way and she was seeing it a different way. And so, not a angry, I'm going to wreck the car kind of fight, but just, a debate amongst equals in love. And but it's kind of a fun thing for me to do that. And so in my mind, I think if I can just give you the right argument, if I can find out who you are and what you think about and what's going to affect you, then I can have the right words to say to you to kind of, steer you in the right direction and get you to understand what I want you to understand. I think what we need to do is go into this world the same way that Paul goes into it. When he enters in the city, he is driven towards proclamation because of his desire to see God worshipped rather than idols. His desire to see people come to an understanding of who God is so that they can be saved and that they would then go out and proclaim the worship of God as well. He wants that to be the way that this works, is that as he goes into these places, it's not just let me learn about your culture and say some stuff and let's talk about another philosophical way that instead of these two ways that you think, here's another way to think. That's not what's going on here. He is proclaiming a different philosophy about life. But the difference is his comes with this is the only philosophy. This is the only way. And it's punctuated not with, here's some things that we think, or here's our great intellect. It's punctuated with resurrection. It's punctuated with the defeat of death. That this is the only way that you can seek to escape the one enemy that you cannot defeat. The one enemy from the time that you're aware of life and what it is and what time is and how this thing works that you know is there. He's saying this is it. That Stoic philosophy, it may get you jacked and make you really strong and be impressive to everybody, but it's not going to defeat death. That Epicurean philosophy, it may make you feel really good and enjoy your life and just be a jolly, happy person that just enjoys everything, right? But you still have to face death. What we ultimately need to understand is that what God wants us to see is not just how do you have a good life. If you read the Bible or you go to church or you think about this stuff and all you come away with is how do I have a good life? This is God's message for me to have a good life and be a better person. You've missed it. You failed. You don't understand what he's laying out for you. What he wants you to understand is that you can be his. And that you, though you die, may live again. That you, being a rebellious sinner, can have forgiveness. You can be made new. You can be made whole. That your shame can be done away with. He wants you to understand that there is a God that is separate from you, but desires you, longs for you, wants your worship, wants your praise, but doesn't need anything from you. But you don't have anything to give him. Isn't that an awesome thing? What an incredible thing. Have you ever been friends with somebody who doesn't need anything from you? It's a rare thing. Most of the time, part of being friends with people involves kind of a exchange of favors and taking care of each other, because that's what we want to do. Have you ever been friends? I've been friends with a few people that I didn't have anything they needed. Like they were set with life. And they were just there. That you go to their house, you hang out with them, and they're like, I just want to help you. I want to provide for you. I want to be your buddy. That's a weird thing. That's it feels strange to walk into that. That's who God is there. He's not seeking anything from you. He's seeking your good. That's it. He wants you. He desires you. As we consider these things, I think it's important that the last thing I wrote here is we're not here to build a kingdom. We're not here to argue people into a philosophy that then builds an organization, We're here to proclaim a kingdom that already exists. We're here to help people understand that there is something beyond this world. That just escaping through pleasure, escaping through entertainment and distraction and everything else will never achieve anything. But there is a God that loves you enough to send his own Son to die for you, to pay the penalty that you owe, to make you not just a better person or a clean person or a moral person, but to make you his person, his own child, part of his kingdom, his beloved. That's the point of the gospel. That's what all of this is laying out. We have to get away from this idea that all we are is a system to make people better at being good families or good husbands or wives, or all of that stuff is part of it. That's fruit. But we must deal with the root of who we are. And ultimately that is his. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this time that you've given us, Lord. I thank you for the ability to study your word together, to think about, Lord, who you are and what you've done for us. Lord, I pray that as we encounter people in this world, Lord, that we wouldn't present, Lord, just a place for them to go to enjoy time, something to meet their needs. Lord, we wouldn't just present to them a philosophy. Lord, we would present to them life from death, an overcoming of the greatest enemy that exists. Or that we would present to them, Lord, your kingdom that we can be a part of. Lord, and ultimately, your worship, what we're created to do. Lord, I thank you that you have chosen us to be your people. You've chosen us to be proclaimers of your word. I pray that you would watch over and bless these people that are gathered here today. That you would use them this week to demonstrate your glory and your love and your worship. It's in the name of Jesus I pray. Amen. All right. So before we go, I guess just leave that on. Okay, so about 7 years ago, probably to this time right now, I was sitting around a kitchen table talking with Ernie and Sherry and Jerry. I remember, very fondly because I was talking to Natalie about, okay, what are we going to do, where we're going to go, all those different things. And Natalie was like, I don't want to go there, I think. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know where that is even. Like, I have no idea. I've never lived in the country. That's just not it. And I remember sitting there with Natalie, or she wasn't sitting with me. She was, I think, maybe we had Adeline. She was kind of like wandering around doing stuff, but we were talking on the computer. We were doing some, just talking about what the future could look like at Ebenezer. And I remember seeing Natalie get closer and closer. And she came and finally she sat down. I think we had the bench at the table at that time. And she sat down where she was kind of out of the frame, and then she kind of scooted in. I don't remember if she was ever at the point where you could actually see her, but she was listening because everything about this church intrigued us. I can tell you that in 7 years, that hasn't changed. We love this church. We love you guys. The other part of that is there's been something stirring within me that's been saying that our time here is coming to a close. It's not a anger. Nobody's mad. I really do love you guys more than you could ever, probably ever will know. And there's this thing where, you guys called me to be a pastor. I'd only ever been a youth pastor. I'd only ever been, the other guy that was kind of in the background. Didn't have to tuck my shirt in or anything like that. Just the playing with the kids somewhere. And that means more to me than you probably will ever know. Realistically, ever know. But Natalie and I we've been going at this thing our entire lives pretty much, but pretty steady for the last 11 years. And I can tell you, we're both tired. It feels like it's time that we need to take a little bit of a break. And that's not because of anything that anyone has done or said. It feels like the way that God is leading us right now. And so I presented to the deacons, we talked about it, and in keeping with the idea that nobody's mad and everybody's cool. Rick tried to trick me the other day at lunch. We were talking about dates in the future, and he hit me with a date, and then he added 27 to the end of it, or maybe 28, I can't remember. We want to stay around for a little while you guys prepare. I'd like to help you, prepare, kind of change gears in what we're talking about in preaching. But also, we have the Fall Festival. It's kind of the, one of the things we care a lot about. We want to help you guys with that. And I keep saying you guys, and I don't mean it like that. I mean us, because it doesn't matter where we are us. I really do mean that. And so I don't know what I feel like I'm just going to ramble if I just stand here and talk. But if you want to talk to me about it, I'm glad to talk to you. There's not a moral failing. It's not there's no weird things that are going on. It's just the way sometimes God moves. Our next step, I don't know what that is. We don't have a church that we're going to go to or anything particular that we're going to go start. We've been kind of exploring how to survive and make money. But we're kind of looking at that. We'll probably move back towards Jacksonville. We're around family, kind of support us for a little while, and we can live live with that. So there's not like I said, just to reemphasize, make sure we're all on the same page. There's no anger, there's no aggravation, there's no mad. There is truly only love, and there's a desire to see. In one of our meetings, Ernie said he wanted this to be the fastest growing church in the association, and we kind of talked about that. I was like, where we are, I don't see that happening. That's the same desire I have. I want this church to grow. I want this church to be not just a bigger place with more buildings and more stuff, but I want it to be a place where people truly know who God is, that they truly care for one another in a way that demonstrates the love that Christ has placed within us. Because that's ultimately the testimony that we need to have as the church. And so, like I said, I'll stand here and ramble forever. And I feel sick to my stomach, and I hate all of this. I've had to do this a number of times. And I can tell you, there have been some of those times where I was like, whew, like, can we just have the car running and I'll just dip in, say some words, and go out? This isn't one of those. I've had most of you guys in my home. I've spent a lot of time with you guys, and we've walked through some difficult and painful things, and I appreciate you guys a lot. I love you guys a lot. And I can say the same for my own family. They wanted to stay in Jacksonville because they didn't want to be here today. And they were like, I just don't want to have to be there. But they love you guys. Y'all have, they were little when we got here. This is the only place Adeline's ever known, really. Maybe that's what's wrong with her. No, I'm just kidding. If you saw the face she just made when I said that, you would understand. But we love you guys, and we appreciate everything in these past 7 years. And we will always be praying for you. It looks like probably after the Fall Festival will be our time of departure. So we'll be around for a couple months. If you want to talk, if you want to pray together, any of those things, I'm here. If you want to build a building and carry some wood around, I'm here for you. I love you guys. Let's pray together, and then we'll be dismissed.